Hi YouTube, this is another video from your friendly neighborhood reviewer, Evelyn. So, I wanted to review another K-drama series. You can see there's a recurring trend here. I might move on to another movie or so on, but I want to review It's Okay, That's Love, or It's Alright, This Is Love. The series came out around 2014, but I just newly discovered this series, just flicking through things that I wanted to watch. The series is one of my top best series. It deals with issues of mental health, trauma, healing each other's mental and emotional wounds. The series stars Jo In-sung. He plays the title character Jang Jae-ol, who is like a radio DJ, a novelist. And at the beginning of the episode shows that his brother gets released from prison and ends up with vengeance, wanting to attack Jae-joel, the character, and ends up stabbing him in the shoulder. And from that point on, we see that Jae-joel has this trauma gets implanted into his head, where his normal life isn't the same. The classic thing about, they say, when people are really mentally ill, like, you don't know that you're crazy, you think you're fine. That's when you know that you're unwell, with the things that you do, it just looks normal. So as the series progresses, we realizes that Jang Jae-ol has money. He owns the building and the cafe where he's living, and he owns another house. And in that building lives a psychiatrist played by Sung Dong-il, who plays Jo Dong-min, and then also houses another psychiatrist that is going through her PhD learning. The actress played by Hyo-jin. I've seen her in other series like Masters of the Sun. She's really good, and she plays the character Hae-soo. She also has other psychological wounds emotionally, where she saw her mother's betrayal and then associate men, relationships, intimacy as an act of betrayal. As the series progresses, the main character Jae-ol and Hae-soo, they interact together on the TV show first. And there's a bit of dislike going on, the cat and mouse kind of fighting, but you can see the passion there. And then something happens, which I can't remember. I saw the series quite some time ago, but still watched some of the clips, where he ends up moving. They end up finding out that he's the owner of the building, the cafe, and they get together to work together, because Hae-soo goes and offends Jang Jae-ol, and then he goes and says, okay, I want all of you to get out from this building, my building. So they apologize, and then as the series progresses, realizing that Jang Jae-ol initially says he has obsessive compulsive disorder, which is seen in his rooms, which is all immaculate and everything. And the other bit that we find out is he's unable to sleep in normal beds. He prefers to sleep in bathtubs, which is later revealed. He later reveals to Hae-soo after they start to get together, understand each other, that his mother and his brother at the time, they were all physically abused by their father. So when Jang Jae-ol had to escape from the abuse, he ended up running, ended up having to go down a sewer hole. And ever since then, the only place that he could sleep is in bathtubs. So you can already see there that some of the heartstrings are starting to break. And at the same time, Jang Jae-ol, through his mental struggles, is also healing Hae-soo, showing that not all love is bad. Love does come with the bad, the good and the ugly, but then we have the kind of bits of love, the unconditional love, willing to go through the heartache. And at the same time, since Hae-soo and Jo Dong-min, they work at the hospital, we also see the storylines of other patients. The series also did tackle about transgender violence. They talked about schizophrenia, and that bit of the schizophrenia is relevant. There's a couple that we see where the woman is currently pregnant and she suffers from schizophrenia, but she's fine at the moment, but her and her husband are kind of hesitant whether they should continue the pregnancy, because being off medication will leave her vulnerable. We don't know that, and then Jang Jae-ol sees this and he kind of wonders, there's the whole stigma attached. Can you be happy and still have a mental illness? Can a mental illness, be managed? And that particular episode is where Hae-soo finds Jang-jo sleeping, in a in the public not in the public toilet, because they were staying at a campsite. He was sleeping in one of the kind of like portable toilets, and that's when he kind of reveals more about himself. As the series progresses, Jang-jo falls in love with Hae-soo, but Hae-soo at first is like doesn't want to know anything about that, doesn't believe him, thinks he's a player, and doesn't know all this type of stuff. And then there comes another part to the story, which we see Jang-jo's relationship with a boy, which he sympathizes with, and reminds him of himself, of his childhood, because the boy says that he's been abused by his stepdad, just him and his mom, and he tries to help this boy. And there's certain bits where we find that he's talking to the boy, which he names Park Soo-gon. Oh no, apologies, not Park Soo-gon. Apparently the actor who plays this boy is like in some band. Oh, here we go. Han Kang-woo, played by Dong Kyung-soo, and Dong Kyung-soo left EXO, from EXO, Do Kwang-soo, and he plays the character of Han Kwang-woo. And then we see that kind of like relationship going on there. However, it's later revealed that the character Han Kwang-soo is Jang-jo's imagination. This boy was never real. And then we turn out to find whether Jang-jo has schizophrenia, and like what brought this on, like how is his mental state handling with the trauma that he suffered from. There's another part of the story that I haven't really touched upon, which is the other character, Park Soo-kwon, played by Lee Kwang-soo. I believe that he's been in the show The Running Man, like The Running Man, and he plays having Tourette syndrome and how the difficulties of managing Tourette syndrome. And there's another side story where he gets together with a high schooler, but of course he waits until she's a bit more older for them to have a proper relationship. And then when the story progresses, everybody finds out that Jang-jo is he's ill, because they see in the CCTV footage him like fighting against Han Kwang-woo's stepdad. Turned out to be all he was fighting in the air. He was fighting in his mind. And then when this gets exposed from the CCTV footage, then it gets later revealed that 3 years prior, when his brother initially came down and stabbed him, that was the point where his mind couldn't take it. That the certain guilt that he had with what happened to their dad. That's the other part of the story. What happened to their dad when the dad died? That he didn't help his older brother. That he had to do, the imaginable, and his brother couldn't accept it. The only way he could accept it is with Jang-jo's death. So the Jo Dong-ming, he's the talking head here. He acts as the fool and stuff, but he's the talking head. Like when stuff comes to it, he goes and helps the people that's living in a close proximity to him as the elder psychiatrist. He says the only way he could have rationalized how he could make up for his guilt was not to commit suicide, but was to make it look like an accident and give all the money to his mom and his older brother. So his mind was already playing around with how he could die. It's just like he just wanted that kind of like weight to be lifted off for himself. And the other important part was in the story was the truth of what happened when Jang-jo and his older brother's dad died, because that night, because it was revealed in that night the dad just went off, just like was going to kill everybody. So there was a struggle that ensued when the dad was beating up the mom, and Jang-jo, like young at the time, picked up a knife and inadvertently like was holding it, but the dad like rammed into it by accident, and then he was stabbed there. And the mom at the time, which was explained by Jo Dong-ming, was in a dissociated state, decides to burn down the house where they were living, and Jang-jo goes and sees his mom doing that. And in his kind of mind, the way to save his mom, he goes and like like leaves all the blame on the older brother. So that's what Jang-jo's guilt is, that he wanted to save his mother, he wanted to preserve something, and at the same time he kind of resented his older brother, because the older brother is not clean in this. He also abused him as a kid, but he's not completely evil. He's just a product of his unstable childhood. So as the series ramps up, everybody's found out about Jang-jo's condition, including Hae-soo, and at first she can't believe it, because as a psychiatrist she goes and doubts, she goes and blames herself. How could she have missed the signs that Jang-jo was obviously in pain? And it takes time for them, because the magic about this series was a community coming together of health professionals, looking at the person and not at the disease, separating both from one at the other. And they kind of got together, the hospital where Hae-soo is and Dongmin, they came together to carefully trying to establish how unwell Jang-jo is, that he doesn't realize that him himself is unwell. And after Hae-soo sees the signs and asks questions about Hae-soo asks questions about Han Gang-woo, she realizes that all the things that was wrong with Han Gang-woo was this Jang-jo's own subconscious making things up. And then she realizes that they're gonna need to involuntarily put him into the mental health clinic, against his will, because he doesn't realize how ill he is. And when they were all planning to get Jang-jo, admitted into the hospital, it's his mind told him that something was going on, that the date for him to publish this book was actually him planning to die. His suicide, because he used Han Gang-woo as a vehicle. He was trying to help Han Gang-woo, but the more he tried to help, the more he got himself hurt. So he disappears after getting Jang-jo disappears after getting a phone call from Han Gang-woo, and he races off and disappears. And at the same time, when they were planning to admit Jang-jo, then goes to chase to find where he is. And on the same date, coincidentally, that's when his brother gets released from the prison. So therefore, Jang-jo planned the date of his accident or suicide, like you like to call it, was when his brother got released. So he wanted to give his brother some relief, and he had planned to give all his money to his brother. So they find him, and that's the moment when Jang-jo's reality collapses. He's admitted into the hospital, and even though they show him CCTV footage of him fighting against nothing, him talking with nothing, he refuses to believe that Han Gang-woo is, a hallucination. And then goes the thing of him refusing treatment, him leaving the hospital, and his older brother and him reconciling, and his older brother finding out that it was Jang-jo never killed, their dad. It was the mom, and the older brother realizes that, what he did was for their mom, and even he says that he's his mom's son as well. He probably would have done the same thing, that he should have told him. And Jang-jo comes into realization that Han Gang-woo is him, his subconscious, his trauma. And then it's he goes through a working process, and then he runs back to Hae-soo and begs, that he needs help. He still sees Han Gang-woo everywhere. And then it goes to the epilogue where Hae-soo is traveling around, and then she comes back when Jang-jo is released, and then they have that beautiful reunion. And then they get married. It's a really good series. I have a lot of deep emotions with the series, and I really liked the actor Jo In-soon. I find it a shame that he's not in any other upcoming series. He's in a movie which I think I'll plan to see. I would plan to see. that he's in a movie called was it Escape from Mogadishu? So I'll probably will look into that movie, but it's a good series. I would recommend everybody to watch. Well, YouTubers, thank you for another review. Give a like, subscribe, and share the video.